Trustee Tyson and the three board members. And remember that the legal statute says that regardless of what the indictments are, that any person is innocent until proven guilty, and we need to objectively work towards our goal with input from all four of us to make sure that we do what we're obligated by oath to do.
I would just note that the board is also troubled, of course, by these indictments. David, you're right. Folks are innocent until proven guilty. With that being the case, we are the fiduciary responsibility for the township that rests on us as well. Therefore, I do think it's fair that the board look at things within our power to address some of those concerns from township residents.
Yeah. And so we've spent the last couple of days trying to figure out, go through the duties and responsibilities of our office, et cetera, reaching out, trying to figure out what authorities we have, and we're going to make sure to continue to explore those so that we can actually make sure that we are being responsible with township funds. So we'll make sure to do that. Anything that we want to add? I know that one of our biggest concerns, we receive a lot of concerns about what happens with funds, what not. And, we take our fiduciary duties pretty seriously. So we'll be working on those and making sure that we go through the process and that we can make sure that we go through the process for everything, including budget season, which is coming up, and doing the right thing and working hard to make sure that our township can continue to function properly. Anything you guys wanted to add or anything? No? All right. So, and this is my mistake. While I was traveling, I did leave out two items on the agenda that are pretty standard. Without any objection, I would like to just add just this moment for the trustee to comment, as well as the fire department update, which is pretty standard.
Do we have a trustee update on here? Do we have a trustee update on the agenda?
No, that's what I was saying. Without objection, I'd like to add it to the agenda.
I'm just making sure. Sure. Let's go ahead and have a trustee update after this agenda.
Okay, perfect.
So she can answer.
All right. Perfect. All right. Trustee Tyson, is there any particular comment or anything like that? No? Okay. Deputy Lewis, do you have a fire department update?
We did 82 60. And this is the date.
Yeah. Okay.
387. What was the last year?
379. Yeah. Yeah. So again, that's still running a little bit ahead of last year at this point, and I know that last year we were running pretty ahead of the year before as well. So highlights the continuing trend of growing number of runs, I guess. We'll have to continue to find a way to have a permanent solution and make sure that we can run the fire department and carry out those runs, because that's an important part of important part of our township. All right. We have, moving on to the next bit, we have the public comment and communications. So in light of the emergency with this facing the state, in keeping with the executive order, the public will have limited ability to physically attend this meeting. We do have a couple of people here present, but most of the people are still participating via online. And so we'll be doing that. But there is a moment here for comments, and then you can also comment by emailing the board at our email, which is board@wabashboard.com. And Brendan is typing that into the chat again. Okay. With that in mind, is there anybody that would like to have a public comment? We can start with the in-person people here. So Is there anybody that would like to have a public comment? All right, so let's go on to, all right. So,
Thank you.
and for that, like for those, sorry, we are a little bit, like having a little bit technical issues. We'll repeat what Patricia Mason said. She was glad to have David Tate join the board and that he would be a great addition for the township and to be able to help the fire department and the township, moving forward. She also did say that he jumped into a hornet's nest. So. All right. So,
folks on Zoom, if you could please raise your hand if you're able. If not, I think we'll turn to you now and just kind of speak up, and we'll try to put you in queue if we have to.
all right. I see Jamie Roth raised her hand.
Yes.
You can go ahead and, yeah.
So I'm
Okay.
confused. Is Ms. Tyson there?
Yes, she's present here.
Can we see her?
Oh,
Jennifer, I wanted
She's
to
over there
address
on-
you. I wanted to address you personally because I am a township constituent. And my life and my family's life are possibly being put in danger by the choices that you are making. You're endangering the lives of my neighbors, my home that I recently purchased in the past year to move into this lovely township. You are single-handedly destroying something that is very lovely. Lives of firefighters. I find you to be an absolutely abhorrent person who is on such an incredible power trip. And it is time for you to step down because endangering my life, my family's life, my friends, my neighbors is absolutely unconscionable, and it is not, it shouldn't even be happening. And the decisions that you continue to make are absolutely atrocious. I think you are a horrible person. And if you continue to single-handedly burn down, pun intended, this fire department and this township, and you cost me more money and you endanger my life and my home, I will wish nothing but evil on you for the rest of your entire life. And I don't want to hear anything from you back. You just needed to listen. I'm finished.
all right.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment at this moment? You can either raise your hand. I know that not everybody knows how to raise their hand on a Zoom meeting, so if you need it, you can unmute yourself as well. So.
I had one more thing. My 13-year-old son wanted you to know that he also thinks you are a terrible person for putting him in danger and his family and his home in danger. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We have a special name for you at our house.
I see a person named Amos is raising their hand. You can go ahead and speak.
Thank you.
Amos, I apologize. Could you please give me your full name for the record?
Yeah, Miller, Amos Miller, Miller.
All right, thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead and have a comment.
Yeah, I was hedging my statement because I didn't want to come across as focusing on any personal issues or anything like that. I was just wanting to focus on, does Trustee Tising have any plans to resign from the position because of just the lack of trust that's being thrown about in this situation? And what would be the possibility of the plans of, are the plans going further with trying to disband the volunteer folks and fire the full-time employees? Because that obviously brings about a concern of township safety as I think the previous comment was trying to get at, and then also our insurance rates and those kinds of things that affect us here in the township.
Oh,
For
I
Wabash.
didn't, I actually was muted there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Jennifer said that she didn't have any particular comments at the moment. That you could email her office, and you put the email on.
I will. Jennifer, what's the end part again? Is that Wabash? Thank you.
That you could email her office and she would be happy to put a statement together. Statement. Is there anybody else that would like to offer a public comment? Before we do that, I would highlight that that's obviously a concern that the board is very worried about, given that we do have, the money was between the emergency loan that was approved before my joining the board and the township money that's incoming for, regular appropriations process. We have the funds to maintain our current department through at least the end of the year, and with the second expected emergency loan, we would be making it all the way past the end of our term in office. So I share that concern because we don't want to see people needlessly lose their their livelihoods in the sense of our department, people having to see increases in insurance rates due to the actions of our elected officials, in particular Trustee Tyson. And, we have all of these concerns, and I would like echo what Mr. Miller said. Was there anybody else that had a public comment? You can either raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Seeing none, I believe we can move on to the rest of our agenda items on the agenda, Chair.
Well,
Okay.
I did have a follow-up if you don't mind.
No, please go ahead. Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't want to be speaking out of turn, but it was the follow-up question was having to do with the finances that are being used and where is the money being used that is left that is supposed to be earmarked for the volunteer fire department's equipment or the current 3 staff members that we have. Is that money being diverted to any lawyers' fees and those kinds of things?
Amos, I'll go ahead and address that. To reprogram many of those funds, one would have to go through the board itself, our body. In addition to that, though, we would not be aware of any change in those funds. There are certain funds you can also not reprogram from.
Okay.
However, I'm not aware of any changes that have been made.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we haven't seen any particular changes. I mean, just to give you guys an idea, there's a couple of different funds that relate to fire. One of them is used in particular for upgrading equipment and stuff like that, and that's just been on a normal, regular schedule, and it continues to be so. In addition to that, there are 2 funds from which we have been that have been designated primarily for the purpose of covering salaries, etc. One of those is the 1111 Fire Fund, and that one is where most of the and in general would be where the services of our paid fire department would be paid from. In addition to that, there's also the emergency loan, which was the reason that we got it was to be able to continue to pay for benefits, for example, for the additional firefighters that we hired, as well as their benefit packages, health insurance, etc. So those are the 2 main funds from which that would come in. We've gone through and looked at those funds, and that's where we see the money being available to be able to continue having the department employed as needed. So as currently, needed and whatnot. So before we jump on to the next bit, I did want to give one last opportunity for public comment.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
there was somebody that had public comment here. Mr. Ward, you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, Randall Ward, I'm a township resident of a couple years. So my question is, I don't deal with rumor. I'm wondering what our process is as far as reconciliation. My understanding is the board members, yourselves set the budget, and then the trustee position spends the money. So how frequently, it's a unique form of township government, how frequently are bills reconciled, and is that part of the purview of the board members? And how long ago, or what's the cycle for reconciling bills, so the public has some confidence in the expenditures?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randall. When it comes to reconciliation, on some level that happens every year at the state. They will look through the money spent, the different funds, the leftover funds, what's rolling over to the next year. They'll then look at what you're proposing to spend and make sure you have the money to actually spend those delineated line items. Additionally, though, there is at least once a term an audit of the books done by our state oversight agency. Additionally, with some of the charges, again, regardless of how they turn out, and knowing that that'll probably happen over some period of time, I suspect we will have another audit here in the next year or two or so.
Thank you for the response. I was hoping to hear it was done monthly, like a lot of businesses and the business I'm in looks at. So I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
Absolutely, Randall. A little bit more color. We have asked for funds and ledgers on a monthly basis. I think we've been open to talking about that on a quarterly basis. We've been asking this for a number of years. We've asked for it, given this constituted board, since David's inception too. So every board member I'm aware of has asked for that. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate that.
And have you seen the receipts then?
Up to a certain point, that is correct. I don't believe we've seen April, but we do have access to the previous month's ledgers, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have access to January through March. April wasn't provided. At the beginning of my term as chair, I shared a request that these documents be provided before each meeting, given that before our standard meeting, we might have meetings outside of our standard schedule, but our standard schedule is we meet on the third Tuesday of every month. And we've requested that those be provided to us in advance of that. Basically, through April for this meeting would have been our request, right? So we'd like to see that, because that is part of what every normal business or government or nonprofit organization does. And that's a concern when we're not having that happen. Because that's the only way that we can ask questions, in addition to be able to have normal conversations about what expenses are we having regularly? What does budget look like next year? Where can we where could we do a better job of spending our money? Where do we need additional funds allocated? All of these conversations would happen, and it's not a process that should happen on one day in September. It's something that should be an ongoing process throughout the year. So.
Yep. Thank you. Oversight is important. Thank you.
Exactly. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, Trustee Tyson had a question.
Yeah. Previous board members were approving the revenue emergency fund dollars, that you did not support that, and that was not something that you wanted to see happen in the future. And so this is a deviation from my understanding of what the direction that the board was taking from February and March.
Just because, we're still having a little bit of a technical, issues there. Wanted to, yeah, so would you be able to approach over here? Sorry to bother, just so that it could be like posed specifically. And then I can answer the question.
Well,
I assume you're back.
do you want me to do the phone or?
No, they're on the phone, yeah, you're all good, yeah.
Okay, so my question is, in February's meeting, and then in March via email, I had received information from Angel Valentine and Michelle Whitebrock that the board was not in support of using emergency fund dollars, and that they had changed direction from the previous board's plan to move forward with emergency loan funds. So when you answered Amos Miller's questions, you said that you were in support of using emergency fund dollars, and that is a change, and so I'm asking for clarification.
There's a huge difference between having firefighters with no plan of funding and maintaining current employment levels. Those are very different.
Yeah, I would basically reiterate what Brendan just said. What we have communicated repeatedly to the trustee was that we're not in favor of adding additional firefighters beyond our current level when we don't have a sustainable source of funding. Essentially meaning if we were talking about keeping the 3 firefighters, we're completely, well, 3 paid firefighters that we have right now, that is what I meant. If we're looking at keeping these 3 paid firefighters, we want to make sure that we can keep them, and we're open to like all sorts of conversation and trying to figure out how do we keep their livelihoods here in the department and make sure that we continue to provide funds. It's what we've told every firefighter that's asked. It's what we've told every constituent that's asked. It's what we've told you over email. What we've said is that we're not open to borrowing more money to add people to the positions of additional firefighters when we're looking at, we can only take 3 emergency loans in 5 years, and it's not sustainable. Like, if we don't have a permanent solution, we shouldn't go around adding staffers when we can't afford to do so, and we're putting their livelihoods at risk, and we're not being fiscally responsible in trying to make sure that our township can grow. Like, I think that I'll speak for myself, but I think I can also speak for Brendan. We haven't had as much conversation with David, but we know that because he's newer to the board, obviously we talked with him. But, we know that like our township has grown, the need for fire has grown, et cetera. And we want to make sure that we're going towards a permanent solution. We just aren't in for irresponsible adding of firefighters so that then they get threatened to be fired or their livelihoods are at risk. All these things are not things that we're willing to undertake, and I don't want to add more people into this fiasco. So that continues to be the stand that I've had ever since February, and it's also what our emails would reflect. So, yeah.
So the March email specifically about the 1977
Mm-hmm.
fund,
To add members.
staff.
No, that you can look up any of our emails. I've never stated that we shouldn't use emergency loan dollars for our current staff. That's never been my position. That loan was taken out for their benefits, for their salaries, for their, perf and health insurance and all that sort of stuff that we strongly believe that our firefighters deserve. So there's no reason why that would have been our position then, and it's certainly not our position now. You might want to use
April meeting,
Mhm.
Or the April, report, that you didn't receive.
Correct.
So it had been our agreement that I would receive an agenda from you prior to.
The agenda was posted on Thursday on the township stores, so you had access to the agenda. It was also shared with your staff.
And on that agenda, the trustees update was not there.
Yes, and I communicated that it had been a mistake that we.
Tonight.
No, we communicated much earlier than today that have
With
been,
me.
yes,
How did we communicate that?
via email.
And you said that you left off the request.
No, the request is standing, as we've stated. I accidentally left out the trustees update because I used the format for the last meeting, which didn't have a trustee update or a fire update. And that was a mistake. And I said that it was my mistake.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I'm here this evening and I'm reporting this meeting because we have repeatedly asked the board for the meeting minutes since February of 2021. And we have not received any of the state required documentation to upload to Gateway since February. We've asked 4 times in the last 2 weeks for these documents.
And to go back and check on the records, we have to provide them. I think that's a good benefit for us to be able to meet again in person. So we're able to make sure that exchange happens. Tonight, this evening, if and when we ever get to approving the minutes, I've got the minutes here, ready to be signed, with your line to attest that it has indeed been signed and accepted.
Yeah, we've obviously also been dealing with the same township agency. We haven't been able to get our signatures on all of those documents because, we haven't been in person, but our intention was that now that we are in person, to get all of those there. In addition to that, all of our meeting minutes videos are online as well, so those are available publicly.
We've kept those records.
Yeah, but we haven't physically signed them.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, so going forward then, as we've said, it's a standing request, and we have these meetings every third Tuesday, and we've asked that information be provided, actually since my time beginning on the board, and then we made it even clearer in January, and then we finally got the first report in March. But anyway, thank you for your questions. Going on to the next bit of the agenda, we had a spot for Gus Nyberg to speak regarding the niches agreements for Sandridge Cemetery. I know that David has been working particularly with some of the constituents and stuff like that. That had questions and we also have an opportunity if anybody has questions for Gus, we'd be happy to have you here and whatnot. So, yeah. All right. I'm assuming you're Gus. Sorry, it's hard in the all online world. I do apologize. Before, if you want, yeah, you can come over here. Is there? Yeah.
And if you'd like to just kind of address your thoughts on the community, perhaps your experience with David.
Yeah.
And generally with the township.
Yeah, so Nick has worked with Township last year to do management at Sandridge, and that was ran out in November last year. And then we have on the table to renew that for this year. And the township's willing to work with us. We're excited to work there, and there's a number of rare plants out there that we're happy to find, continue them to exist and flourish and flower and do all that good stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, we can go ahead and after the meeting, we can print out that document that the board had approved at our last meeting to make sure that we have a physical signature for you. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, that we have that agreement and we can print it out for you. Right. All right. David, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I want to precede this by indicating we had received at the trustee's office several phone calls of concern regarding the status and maintenance of Sandridge. I met with Gus. He was very amenable to meeting out there, and we both agreed that, frankly, my words, excuse me, my words were we dropped the ball. I think we did drop the ball. I think the board could have done a better job of keeping the cemeteries up as we were obligated to do. And Gus was very forthright in saying, let's get this done. This last Thursday, we had a number of volunteers from niches and some people in the community showed up, spent maybe 3 hours out there, something like that, burned some leaves, hauled away some trash, picked up a lot of the faded plastic flowers, had a number of community members come out, initially expressed their concern, and when they saw the scope of what Niches was trying to do, which in some cases seems a lose-lose situation for some people because they want the grave sites, I guess, immaculate, and yet we need to preserve those endangered species that, if allowed to disappear, are never going to come back. So we've got a twofold role here. One is to do our role as obligated, and the second is to work with this land trust company group to do our best to preserve those endangered species. We're going to sign an agreement tonight that binds us to that. I might also say that there are a number of groups who are willing to step forward and help Niches do this. I think part of the issue is, how does Niches do their task in mowing the southern part, and yet you've got a northern part that has the endangered species, and maintain a distance around those graves so it shows respect to the families and to the individual in that grave site. We're going to take that really seriously, and if we need to bring in some weed eaters on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, we're going to do that. And I'm confident that with Gus stepping forward and some volunteers, we're going to get that done.
Yeah. And hopefully in the near future, we can have more places where that plant is available, and we can expand it just beyond our cemetery and make it so that we can continue preservation's efforts and expand its reach. And that'll also allow for a little bit closer maintenance of our cemetery, if we have the seed available in other places and plants available in other places, so that it's not the only place that it's available, and we don't want to lose it, because it's an important part of our ecosystem, and we want to make sure that we're doing that as well. So
I might also say that we're working with Niches to have a couple of tour dates in June.
Yes.
And we're going to invite the public to come out and have an educational tour, show what Niches and the board is trying to do, and also show that we're taking our obligation to maintain the cemetery as best we can out of respect for the stakeholders there. And we're going to work with Gus to put up 2 new signs on both entrances, because if you haven't been out there, the Niches, which is a really cool sign, talks about the endangered species, is up about halfway into the cemetery, so you really don't understand the importance of what Niches and the board is doing until you're up on the ridge. So we're going to work with Niches to take care of that. And we really appreciate Gus's understanding and his willingness to do this with kind of limited workforce. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. And without trying to get too ahead of ourselves, we know that obviously this isn't anywhere near the end of where we want our cemeteries to be. There's some work that we can look forward to in the future, and conversations about like grants and maintenance of graves, and trying to replace stones that have been damaged over the years, not just
stolen in recent
or stolen in recent years. We can have, that's part of the conversation that we need to have, not just now, but it'll be a long process, past our time on the board for sure. But we can start to leave a better impact for whoever comes next, and we can leave our little seed, no pun intended. So. All right, Gus, was there anything else you wanted to add, or was there questions from the public on this? We can open it for a second. Oh. Oh, well, feel free to forward those complaints on to us. And Gus, sorry to make you part of the process. So we'll make sure to do that. We appreciate that, Patricia. Anybody in the public had a question for Gus, or comment, or but not specifically related to Gus? Wanted to have an opportunity to discuss that before we jump on to the next bits.
Well, thank you again, Gus, for being so amenable to changes, and adapting as we go. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Obviously, it's a work in progress, and we'll continue to work on that. So, yeah. All right. Let's get this here.
Chair, I would move to table, agenda items 6 and 9. But both of the resolutions for this evening, I would move to table those discussion points for future business.
You said tabling 6.
Tabling our resolution regarding our discussion on township assistance guidance, guidelines, and our resolution to discuss leftover township funds.
Yep. So I would second those resolutions, especially in regards to that item 9. I'll add a comment there. Part of the concern was whether we needed to encumber funds specifically left over from last year, so to make sure that we don't lose access to additional township revenue, et cetera. We did go through and reviewed with the ITA, among others, and it said that specifically the encumbrance would be simply limited to paying out contracts from last year that hadn't been paid for but carried out in the last year, whatnot. So we didn't have a need for doing that or even considering it at the moment, and it wouldn't impact our receipt of money coming in next year. So, for example, the money that we had left over on township assistance, which is in the order of 14,000, if I remember correctly, that we have left over, that wouldn't be impacted. That wouldn't impact next year's receipt. So the money that we are expected to receive would be the same. Same thing goes with, for example, fire fund, where we had a leftover of about $50,000 at the end of the year. That wouldn't impact the receipts that we're already expecting to receive. So, through a little bit of research, we found that that wasn't necessary, but we had it on the agenda previously just in case. So I would second that motion to table those at the moment. So we can have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Seeing as there's no opposition and it's unanimous, we'll table those 2 resolutions right now. Going on to the review of township assistance, was that part of what you wanted to table as well?
That was part of my tabling as well,
Okay.
until future business at our next meeting.
Okay, so, yeah, so for item 6 then as well, there was a motion to table that.
I did ball that up all into one motion, and that did pass.
Oh.
So it is tabled.
I just misunderstood him. Yeah,
I
it works
apologize.
perfectly fine. No, it's all good. We do have, so you didn't table it, or did you?
No, budget consideration.
Okay, perfect. All right, so, so we have budget considerations for year 2022. We did want to start talking about those. What part of what we're hoping to do is have a more specific calendar as to what we would like to see our budget season be for this year. Generally speaking, I find that the budget process should last significantly longer so that we can have conversations about specific funds, what that looks like, where we can grow, what we need to do. So we wanted to make sure that we'll be putting a calendar or a potential calendar out by our next meeting and have opportunity for input, questions, et cetera, and then we'll approve a calendar so that we are ahead of the ball rather than behind the ball, has often been the case. So among the considerations, we did want to bring in some of the things that we would like to see this upcoming year, and that'll be part of the conversations that we want to have. We keep having, this year has been very challenging for the board and the township, the fire department, et cetera. So each time that we've had a meeting where we wanted to discuss a specific segment of the budget, so that we can start having the conversations for next year, we get a bigger ball dropped on our laps, and it just has been an exhausting process, to be frank. But we're taking it seriously, and we want to make sure that we're actually getting that done. So we'll be discussing that. We might meet more often in the summer to make sure that we can cover ground on those areas, and that we have a more comprehensive process for what our budget looks like next year. We do apologize. This is the importance of the fund. All right, sorry about that. That was part of our meeting in the fire bay. Means that we occasionally get interrupted with stuff from from calls and whatnot from the radio. All right, so some of the things that we wanted to cover, and we have 4 items over here. We'll start with funding for township assistance. We have a lot of leftover funds from last year that weren't utilized. We previously discussed that, and obviously we've expressed our opinions and our concerns about what happened there. But we have leftover funds, and there are some considerations as to what we want to see happen in the near future with the leftover funds, given that they're not being dispersed at a rate or will run out this year or anything of the sort. And I would be surprised if that changed, to be blunt. So those are some of the issues that we want to make sure that we're looking at when it comes to township assistance. On that same front, actually, we also, and that's part of what we will have to cover more in depth in the future, but we also want to make sure that the guidelines are matching what is happening. Well, that what's happening in the office is matching the guidelines. For example, right now we don't actually have a limit as to how much aid people can receive. And that's been a concern that's been brought to our attention repeatedly. Our guidelines don't state there is a monetary limit. And we've been hearing of a limit of around $200. That's
Actually, and trustee Tyson, if you're able, is the policy $250 per family right now? And is that going to change in the near future? I'm sorry? Okay, good deal. Do you want me to go ahead and send you an email on that note as a reminder?
In addition to that, for example, we have, and I'll let Brendan speak on this, it's kind of his baby. So one of the areas that we've been wanting to see more work being done is an expansion of aid, especially on insulin. That's one big area. It's actually part of what is part of the duties of the trustee as outlined by the state. But we wanted to make sure to start having a process. It doesn't mean that a lot of townships do it, but we want to make sure that we're moving in that direction. So Brendan, take it away.
Sure. Brief overview. I definitely don't want to put the cart before the horse. The goal would be to look into emergency insulin help for folks who would need it and would not be able to afford something like a very small amount of a very expensive liquid. There are states and municipalities across the country that have looked at ways to have an emergency insulin pantry, to partner with private industry, to partner with folks like Eli Lilly, who we have here in our own state. We have activists across the country and actually around the world discussing this issue. It's particularly popular right now as there have been some legislative wins in states across the country. So it's kind of exciting too, and it's really kind of a nonpartisan issue for the most part. People just kind of recognize that when you need a very particular tiny liquid to live, to have that liquid also be the second most expensive liquid in our country doesn't really stand to a lot of reason. So we want to look at ways our township can address that. Anhol alluded to it being in code. Insulin is mentioned twice in code under the trustees' jobs and responsibilities. So I think that's important. I think it's interesting that people in this state even look at the township's office as a backdrop to be that final place to help folks in the absolute most need. And as a diabetic, I can tell you that when you don't have insulin, or when you even don't have enough in your fridge to fill the next cartridge or to put in a syringe to put in your thigh, that's a very scary feeling. And it's an anxiety that I don't think anyone would wish upon anybody. So that's something that I think is important. With a very tiny little bit of platform, I'd like to raise a little bit of awareness. And if we are able to get funds set aside and or program, even inception or in place, I'd very much like to see that. And I do think we have 4 folks who in township government who might be able to help make that happen. Thanks, Chair.
You are muted.
Angel, you're on mute.
I am sorry. What I said was that I'm echoing Brendan's comments and that we obviously wanted to, it's been something that I've wanted to do since we came here, and that it's an important thing and I want to see it done. So that's the short. I tend to go long. So
To address some folks in the chat, Ed Ward, Heather, I see you guys having some chat. She did say that she would get me the information, so I will email the trustee regarding limits on households or individuals receiving aid. And Andy, I believe that's Andy Young. We had a quick question come in here. Did we just give the 2,500 that one time because we made a mistake? I think that's a question that you might email to the trustee. And I would kind of let her address that in her time.
yeah, and reference there, I think, is the $2,500 paid out in like March, April of last year, one of the last payments that we had. Anyway, so in addition to that, other areas that we wanted to talk about is increased outreach to communities in need. And that'll be part of what we'll be discussing as part of what we want to see more of. There's a couple of different areas that this looks like, at least from my perspective. Now, I don't think it would be a surprise to most people. I'm a fairly progressive person, and by fairly, I mean probably among the most progressive around our elected officials. And there's a couple of areas that I really want to see us do better at. Like one area that I think that we have a need in our community is when it comes especially to folks, the Spanish-speaking folks, et cetera. You see it, for example, in our township. We're here on Klondike Road. One big area that has a lot of like Spanish-speaking people that tend to be more in need is our communities over here, Point West and whatnot, are two like mobile home communities. In addition to that, other areas where we haven't done enough outreach and tried to figure out how we can serve those communities in need. Having been a college student here, I was personally blessed when I was a student, and I didn't need to go to anybody for assistance. But I've also gone through the process of seeing people that are members of our community needing assistance and needing a place to be able to coordinate. Doesn't mean that we are able to do everything at the township level. Obviously, the township level isn't designed to solve every issue, but there certainly is more that we can try and do, and there is more outreach that we can do specifically on those fronts. And then the other always forgotten part of it is that we tend to have smaller tribal communities of immigrants from other areas that might be here either on asylum visas or et cetera. And we can do a little bit better. And it's not going to be something that any one individual can do. It's going to be a process, but we want to set a little bit of a path stone so that we can create the path to be able to be a more responsive township over the years. So
another area where we could do better, I think, as well, perhaps particularly this term, we really need to make sure we're talking to the rural parts of our community too. They often will feel outweighed, underthought of, at very least underappreciated when you have a very city-centric perspective. I think when we discuss reaching out to these communities in need, you have to go to some of the more rural communities, and it's not only there, but you have to go to some of these rural communities to find some of that need, which does require some outreach. And I also think, kind of pairing well with your final note there, partnerships and local organizations, making sure we're talking to folks to connect us with those refugee communities, making sure we're talking with folks who are aware of the need of insulin in the community, making sure we're talking to folks who are aware of the rural needs in our community too. Folks like even us getting involved with 4-H might make a lot of sense, as this is a very 4-H proud community too. So I think making sure that we're looking at some of those different groups and hearing from them will be important as we move forward.
Right. There we go. I just wanted to echo what Brendan said as well. One area that goes under address is especially like the limitations on aid for example, our farming communities and more rural communities, either because they have more assets and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that those same folks aren't going through difficult times as well. And in a lot of ways, the system isn't really set out to help them. And so they oftentimes will end up in needing help and not knowing where to turn to. And I think that we can do a better job on that front. And I would encourage ideas and support. You know, we obviously are not all knowing as a board. So if you have suggestions or ideas, feel free to reach out to us, because we want to see our township be more responsive on that front. And I think that with budget season coming around, we have an opportunity to start defining better how we can accomplish that. So that is an area that a big part of why I ran to be on the board. And I want to make sure that even in the midst of all the chaos swirling around the township, that we can get those things rolling. Because every time that we push it back one more meeting out of necessity, it's one less person or one less group of folks that we're helping in a difficult time of need. So, yeah.
So can I ask a question? I can't hear for everybody. So I just want to clarify.
Mhm.
The board is going to be reaching out to different communities and doing advertising for township assistance. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so I didn't say any of that, no. What I'm kind of driving at is that the board can work towards partnerships with different orgs, different groups in the community. That, for example, if we've got, and I'm not particularly aware of these, so we'll have some research, but in my time in Memphis, I went down there actually for a spring break trip. And what we did is we volunteered with a group down there that actually also has a sister group up in Indianapolis, but we worked with refugee children. And that was really rewarding. But finding groups like that that would know intimately about the need, folks who would know intimately about the need of folks with different disabilities, student groups that might know about students in need, those mutual aid groups and that sort of thing. Making sure we're connecting with those groups that are a little bit closer to those communities, similar with 4-H. I think it's good for township government, and that's a goal we're presenting as something we think that's good for township government. That being said, I only am responsible for my role, Davis for his, and Angel for his, and you for yours. In my role, that is something I am actively doing, and I think these guys are also doing this similar work as well. Pardon me, if I contact Tricia, there's a list of the 50 orgs you work with. Is that right? Perfect.
And how to the community.
I'll be sure to get that list so we don't redouble our efforts.
Yeah, and we'll continue to do that work. And, you know, as we've discussed, you know, we have a lot of organizations locally, and I guess give me a second, Patty. We, like what she was saying was that she had a list of 50 organizations that she partners with or whatnot, and that we can ask Tricia for that information. I do know we can do still a better job of doing outreach, of being more responsive, of actually going out and speaking with the organizations. I've always, and I look forward personally, at least, to pass the time of, now that I'm fully vaccinated, I can actually go out and feel confident that I won't harm any constituents in trying to go out and speak with them. We can go out and also try and have conversations and try to figure out where we need to expand our efforts and work more to be able to grow township assistance and actually be more responsive to the need, because we know that's something that we've struggled, and we can look at last year's budget and see that we struggled at that as well.
Patricia Mason.
Yeah.
Work with other organizations and confer funds to other organizations. You have to remember that township funds are limited, and the township is the last resort for people. It's the last safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are other organizations, especially during COVID, there were other funds available, and the township was more than right to send applicants to those federal funds rather than using local funds.
Mm-hmm.
While the church groups around, some of the smaller churches around also have that to assistance, and it shouldn't just be the township.
No, and we agree. I will go ahead and state, this board and previous boards have also made it a point that we go ahead and make sure we are utilizing other resources. Trustee Tyson has also highlighted that she's referred a lot of folks in taking part in programs run by the state. People outside. I'm sorry. Right, and previously, I think she's also highlighted discussions between her and former chair Michelle Whiterock, who also said, yes, use those funds. That's been a point of discussion to say whether we meant don't use township funds versus, just use federal or use that first.
Yeah.
Of course, we want to utilize the federal monies that have come to bear. That being said, too, we also want to make sure we're utilizing our resources. From my perspective, if even us just having a donated fridge in our office that could contain insulin that's accessible between certain hours, yeah, if we can partner with folks where we're not bearing the brunt of buying the very expensive little liquid, we can partner with folks and get their buy-in and try to use peer pressure.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to having your help on it, Patricia. If I can enlist you, I would pull you on my side on that one in a heartbeat. Anything you're willing to do for us on that one, I'd like to work together.
Yeah, and just to clarify, sorry, I do know that, and I do apologize. We'll be doing better for the next meeting too when it comes to that, and I do apologize for the lack of microphone and whatnot. What Patty said was that she defended Ms. Tyson sending like referrals, whatnot, to other organizations, and that was an important part because the township is a point of last resort, not a first place to go to. That was, I believe, the gist and whatnot of your statement, and that especially during COVID, there was an opportunity to use those funds that were available. I just want to make sure that I got those accurately. Okay. Yeah. All right, sorry about that. Again, we're in the fire base, so that happens occasionally. Yeah, so we want to make sure that we're partnering with organizations and whatnot, and we know that we can do better. Clearly, we've seen it. We've seen like places where we can still make improvements. And for example, I did want to highlight, like, one of the areas I mentioned, like when it comes to township, like I mentioned, like for example, college students, it doesn't mean that we cover a lot of all of the need or most of the need. We can also like be able to be a resource to point them in the direction of where they can get assistance, whatnot. But that also means, being able to understand what those resources that are out there are. I know, for example, on campus, it's something, and I'll mention campus because it's a part of what we cover. It's an area where there are a lot of essentially resources that are not used effectively. And if there's some people know that they can come to the township and ask for help, and if we're able to direct them to where they would be best served, then we would be doing a bit of a service. I know that from my day job at Food Finders, townships aren't viewed particularly positively. And I know that we can do a little bit better at that and be more responsive and make sure that we're helping people get those points of assistance, be it through us or through other organizations. So, yep. All right. Going on to the next bit, if that's all right.
Future meetings.
Yep. So future meeting dates for 2021, we have May 15th, 2020.
June 15th, I think we mean there.
Oh, that is, yes, that was a mistake on my end. I do apologize. That it's May 15th, June 15th of 2021, which is the third Tuesday of next month. And we'll be covering specifically budget considerations regarding cemeteries. I know that we didn't get we didn't get to cover a lot of the business regarding township assistance guidelines. So I obviously that table and that will be picking up at the next meeting. Hopefully we can focus on these things that we've really wanted to do. And then we'll outline the process and the dates that we want to see things by, so that we can have a more productive budget season and have more input into the process. So, yeah.
So we have people available to that meeting.
Okay. People available being, oh, okay. Do you mean it as a point of expertise or as a point of public comment? Good deal. Just wanted the clarification. Thank you. And I'm sorry, your mouse might have covered. Dave Durth, I assume as well will be there or virtually.
Okay, we want to make sure that we're going through the process in the best way possible, and having an expert opinion would be this board, I assume consensus. I don't think I'm speaking out of line in saying that we want to have it like Gabe available when it comes to the budget process. Yeah, so. And just to double check, I'm pulling up a calendar. Give me a second, just to give people an idea of what that date is, because I'm bad at this. And that is, yeah, that would be the third Tuesday of July. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so, and what we'll try and do is, and we'll discuss it further then, but likely what we'll try and do is have a meeting bi-weekly basis to cover certain specific things that we want to see prior to approving a budget. And I know that we want it to get started over the summer because we don't want to leave it till the last minute. So, and we'll be in communication, obviously, with your office about what that looks like and whatnot, and what we want to see. And seeing that.
So I would request 30 days notice on this period.
Yeah, and what we're likely to do is we'll probably have something like that set up so that we come into the June meeting with a schedule, and likely we can have even a working meeting prior to that.
And the June meeting is 30 days prior. So if we have a list of things we want throughout that meeting, if we have folks who attend and also have requests, that meeting, we can send an email information requesting from your office, and that'd give you the 30 days then, because it's precisely 30 days, given that it's the third Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it's closer to 28 likely, but that's a, yeah. What we said was she wanted a 30 days notice for budget questions, and we said yes. Anyway, go in addition to that, and again, just a reminder to people, as we start shifting towards the summer, I guess just a comment on format of meetings. We will do better next time for those that are joining us online. We know that we have work to do.
We are excited, I will say this, folks. We are excited for the ability to offer it online and make it accessible. I think that's incredible. Hopefully we'll be able to offer it up more and more, and we appreciate your patience with us and bearing with us. I do think that it is a good thing ultimately, and will allow for us to kind of expand access for folks.
Yeah. And then, again, a reminder that for the June meeting, the plan is, barring a significant change in the national outlook or the local outlook regarding COVID, we'll be meeting again in person, but having a better ability, and we'll try to get actually a microphone for people, so that people can actually show up and comment, and we can try and connect it. We'll try to be a little bit more tech savvy about that. So. But yes, we'll be having it available. We'll be having it available on June 15th, as we said, and you're free also to join us here. And the firefighters have made it possible for us to do that, and we'll continue to follow guidelines, which at the moment are, if you're vaccinated in a setting like this, you wouldn't need to wear a mask. You're welcome to do so if you'd like to. If you're not vaccinated, then we would strongly encourage you, as per CDC guidelines, to wear a mask in a contained space like this. But if you're vaccinated, then you're good. So, yeah.
Ron, to your point, I see it. Pardon me.
Ron, to your point, I do hear you. Again, there will be minutes, though they will not be as detailed as perhaps you might like. We will also have this video posted. So you will be able to continually go back and look and see our comments firsthand and hear that as well. Of course, you also have all of our contact information too. I think part of the ability to kind of open up Zoom is nice because we are able to relatively easily record things as well. I hear you, Ron. Again, you're welcome to kind of request, and then also, again, I hope you're vaccinated, but you're welcome in person too. Thank you.
I know David had a couple closing remarks. So.
I just became aware today that this is the 50th anniversary of the formation and founding of the Wabash Township Volunteer Fire Department. We have Jim Lewis here, who served in this capacity for 35 plus years, I think, here in Wabash Township, and we have Patricia Mason, who's an integral part of forming this. I would like to strongly suggest that the community and the board work together to do something in celebration of their tireless efforts and those that have served the Wabash Township Volunteer Fire Department all these years. A couple of the comments I'd like to make is I'd like to suggest that we develop a strategic plan. The last one was done in the 90s, and we need to talk to people to make sure we know where we're going, where the money is going to go, and what the needs are. If those needs are going to be met, if you go out by Harrison High School on the roads out there, there's an estimated 900 homes that are going to be going in. We need to look at the impact that's going to have on our community. I'd also like to indicate that on the Township Board website, my name is still not on there unless I've changed to Michelle.
I will make sure to update that.
And Ms. Tyson, I'd just like to ask, what is, and I'm asking you to as well, what is the best way that we can put information up on the trustee website and the Township Board website to make people more knowledgeable of the various things happening in our community, but also the current information related to our meetings, proceedings, and so on that seems to kind of be lagging a little bit. Can we take care of that? I mean, is this something that's so monumental that we can't do this? We need to do a better job of allowing the people to go into our websites and find information that maybe it's going to be too difficult to go into a state website or a county website. I've tried that, and some of these are almost insurmountable. So maybe part of our job here is to allow the community to search into our websites for links that we should be able to provide. I don't know yet what those are, but I'm sure with Jennifer's help and the expertise of these two guys and other community members that might be out there, we just need to do a better job of being visible. I'd also like to suggest that as board members and trustee, I think we need to have an obligation to be more visible, go to events in the community, help initiatives with their program, come to things that the fire department is doing, just to say thank you and just to say we're here and have people come up and talk to us. That's a prime time to come up and ask questions and comments. Sometimes at meetings like this, you get so full of comments and questions that you really don't get much done. And I'd like to say that we're going to be out there, all four of us, and we're going to be glad to meet you people. So if there's something coming up that we should be involved in, please let us know. I'd like to go. I'm retired. I've got time to do it. And I'd like to meet the other 60,000 people in this community. So I appreciate the chance to work with the board and the trustee.
Yeah. And yeah, no, and we're looking to that as well. And yeah, let us know. We haven't been able to put everything up on our website yet, but especially if there are things that you think we should add or that would be beneficial beyond like the scope of meeting stuff, documents that we try to prepare for board meetings and stuff like that. We try to update those, but we're still trying to build up. There hasn't been there's not a repository for previous stuff and previous information. And that's on a personal level, not that it's specifically the responsibility or the duty of a board member per se, but part of what I want to do is to try and make it a repository that we can catch up to where we're at and then start going backwards as well, and trying to go further back into the past and make that accessible online, because I think that's helpful. And I think it will also be helpful for future people in our position trying to understand our conversation, the trajectory of the township, and on how they can get involved and what needs to get done and what their views are on things. So, yeah. All right, so I would move that we close this meeting. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
All right, is there anybody opposed to ending the meeting?
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Yeah. Let the record reflect that David did not say that the meeting shouldn't end. Just joking. All right, so thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys at the next meeting, and we'll continue to work with you guys. Thanks.